Underground planes? What do you mean, underground planes? They're planes. Underground is the exact opposite place they're supposed to be. And yet, well, okay, this is a lot of rumor, whispers, conspiracies. So, the verdict's still out as to whether or not these planes are actually there, but allegedly there are, in fact, two, yes, that's right, two of the same kind of plane, probably in the same relative place, underground in mysterious, forgotten tunnels. In where else? New Zealand! Listen, I recognize that at least twice before, we've discussed New Zealand and underwater/underground vehicles. The other times involved locomotives. And now they've done it with planes, and I don't know if this is just New Zealand's thing, or if it's just a weird coincidence, but I think they're getting some heritage from Australia, because Australia does have a habit of just kind of chucking stuff in random places, except Australia tends to find that stuff later and use it to build other horrific abominations, because that's just their thing. New Zealand just leaves the stuff in general, and then it gets forgotten. But rumors are rumors, and it is believed that two actually very historically relevant aircraft are still around, hidden within tunnels, beneath a place that was once called Northhead, and some people still call it that. But now it's officially known as Maungauika? Maungauika. Okay, look, for my sanity, I'm just gonna call it Northhead. Maungauika is what the native Maori people called it. But that place is at the east end of Waitemata Harbor in Auckland, New Zealand. Specifically in the suburb of Devonport. It's a very pretty place, but it was once a military fort, and more relevantly, it's literally just across the water from a place called Mission Bay. Mission Bay was once home to the operations of the New Zealand Flying School, formed in 1915 by the Walsh brothers, Leo and Vivian. The school was originally meant to train pilots for the Royal Flying Corps, and indeed did train quite a number of pilots over the years, though the school itself would wind up falling on hard times after World War I was over, and it would be sold to the New Zealand government in 1924. The operation was always relatively small, with only a handful of planes, but two of them were Boeing Model 1s. A name that is quite literal. The Boeing Model 1, sometimes called the B&W seaplane, was Boeing, yes, that Boeing's first ever commercial product, designed by William Boeing and Lieutenant Conrad Westervelt. The first model of these planes was completed in June of 1916 at Boeing's Boathouse hangar in Seattle, Washington. And being planes built in the 1910s, they weren't anything special. They were made of wood, with wire bracing, and linen covered. Like, these were not, modern planes, but for the time, they were perfectly serviceable. They flew, for one, and flew perfectly well. They were also, as the seaplane name might imply, floatplanes, with, floats to land on water. And while the design shared a lot of commonality with other companies' planes, particularly ones built by Martin, the B&W seaplane had better pontoons for stability and a better engine. Two of them built, sisters, and they were named Bluebill and Mallard. Bluebill first flew in June of 1916, and Mallard first flew in November. They were considered successful in the sense of working, and they were offered to the United States Navy, but the Navy wasn't interested in them. Boeing was brand new at the time, and the planes were fine, but nothing the Navy really needed or wanted in those days. So the offer was rejected. But Boeing did find a buyer for these planes, the New Zealand Flying School, which by default became Boeing's first international sale. For training purposes, which is what the school wanted them for anyway, these planes were actually excellent. Known for being very stable while flying, easy for rookie pilots to get a handle on. One of them even set an altitude record in 1919 of 6,500 feet, which, while not sensational these days, was pretty impressive back then. Even when the school started using newer planes, they still used the B&Ws for express and airmail deliveries. They made the first official airmail flight on December 16, 1919. So, these planes are not only a big part of Boeing's history, but a big part of New Zealand's. And there is officially still one of them around, but not one of the original sisters. Boeing would make a third, but much later. To commemorate their 50th anniversary, they built a third member of the family, designated Model 1A, which is not nearly a nice name as Bluebill or Mallard. You could have given her a name, guys. Like, I don't know, call her Blue Jay, something. Granted, Model 1A is a little bit different than her older sisters, as Boeing added a bunch of structural improvements due to, well, modern engineering, allowing for things like welded steel tubing in the fuselage and tail construction. So, she's much sturdier than her older siblings would have been. She also had much better flight controls and a more powerful engine. But what about the original two? What happened to them? As I just said, they're a big part of Boeing and New Zealand's history. So, where'd they go? Well, that's the thing. We aren't sure. And the rumor is that they're actually still around, but they're hiding, hidden away. Instead of being scrapped, they were instead carted into the tunnels below Northhead. The New Zealand military utilized Northhead due to its strategic location, which involved the building of a fort. This fort had a series of tunnels built underneath it, and the tunnels, were pretty substantial by some guesses. It's believed, and rumored, has been for decades, that both of the original Boeing aircraft are in those tunnels, though I couldn't find any concrete verification as to why or when they would have been put in those tunnels. Regardless, it's believed by many that the tunnels haven't been properly mapped out or explored to a significant extent, meaning that even if the planes aren't there, there might be something, or maybe even nothing. The point is there's stuff to explore. It's there. We have to look around. Rumors started getting much more prevalent in the late 80s and early 90s due to the report of strange chemical smells in the area. This suggested to people, including the authorities, that perhaps old ammunition stored in the fort was decaying, and that presented a risk of, explosion, and nobody wanted that. A major investigation was started, though didn't amount to much, finding nothing new and nothing exciting, and certainly no planes. But there are many, both in New Zealand and worldwide, that believe those aircraft are there, and if they are, deserve to be taken out. For one thing, I couldn't find any verification on this, but some say that Boeing is willing to pay a high price for their original aircraft to have them back, thus making this a bit of a treasure hunt due to the money involved. Granted, that may not even be true at all, but either way, I think they should be found if they still exist. A man by the name of Martin Butler has devoted quite a bit of time to exploring these tunnels and figuring out where these planes are. He has been a big part of pushing the investigation forward, even writing a book on the subject called Tunnel Vision Refocused, providing substantial evidence that the tunnels haven't been completely explored and why the planes could be there. I won't go into a tremendous amount of detail in this video regarding all the evidence that Martin's come up with, because that would spoil his book. But I will say he has done a pretty fantastic job of finding as much proof as possible that perhaps the planes are down there. Or, at the very least, that there's more tunnels down there than the government is letting on. A big part of this story is the conspiracy theory that the government is hiding something, not willing to divulge the fact that the tunnels are far more extensive than they say. Because according to New Zealand's own government, there's no more tunnels to be found, there's nothing else down there, it's fine, it's whatever, don't worry about it. But the thing is, every time a government says, we've done a full investigation and everything's been uncovered when we're all done, there's a pretty large group of people that are like, yeah, but what are they really hiding? And sometimes the government is hiding something, and sometimes the government is being completely truthful in certain cases. It actually varies quite a bit, historically speaking, but what's consistent is that nobody ever trusts what the government says, whether or not it's true. So the government's denial that there's anything further down there has only served to fuel further speculation and intrigue into the situation. But as it stands, as of the making of this video, Nothing further has been found beyond the currently known tunnels. There hasn't been a substantial investigation nor excavation of the area in order to see if there's anything sealed off, anything mysterious, anything lost, whether it be decaying ammo, old guns, or 2 priceless aircraft. However, there is another thing to consider when it comes to finding these aircraft, if they exist at all. Because for one thing, I have seen no direct verification that the planes themselves are even still around. I can't find any proof they're gone, but I can't find any proof that they were saved. This is just a theory. But for the sake of the argument, let's say they are down there. Let's say that at some point they were thrown into storage, perhaps for use later, and then just forgotten about. Which seems to be the basic story we've got going on here. Let's assume that's the case. I'm not sure there's gonna be that much left of them. Even if they are there. This is because of what they were made of. They're wood and canvas. These aren't steam locomotives that would have been made of iron and steel. Because that seriously changes the, preservation element. Because while things like metal do rust and degrade over time, the degradation is much more slow. So even if something like a locomotive's been in the ground or even underwater for literal decades, they can withstand that to an extent where they're still recognizable as a locomotive. They would never run again, of course, but you can still see what they are. These planes, on the other hand, are in a bit of a different situation. They're not made of material that was designed to last the test of time. True, they wouldn't be underwater, and only technically underground. They would be in open storage, perhaps behind a sealed wall, but even in that situation, humidity can build up, and mold can build up, and other sorts of ambient things that just happen due to the test of time. Remember, they'd be in tunnels by the ocean. Water will find them at some point, whether in the air or otherwise. Meaning that if they even are there, or were there, as the case may be, and assuming somebody someday finds them, I'm not sure there's gonna be much left of them at all. Maybe the engines, and the wire bracing, but in terms of the actual construction, I think you're gonna find a lot of rotted wood, and the canvas is likely to be gone entirely. It largely depends on a lot of factors, a lot of elements, a lot of things that we don't have the answers to right now as to whether or not those planes survived, but I doubt you're gonna find them intact to any significant degree, especially when compared to other things that we've talked about being abandoned. So, while some are looking at this as a treasure hunt, wanting to find Boeing's original planes to get a big payout, yeah, I think what you're gonna be doing, if you find them at all, again, this is all assuming they still exist whatsoever, or even put down there in the first place, but if you do find them, you're gonna be like, hey Boeing, want this pile of rusted junk? Because it's all it's gonna be left. It's just been too long. That's my big concern. I would love to be wrong. Always, when it comes to these sorts of things. I would love to sit here and say, boy howdy was I wrong, look at them, they're in pristine condition, they found them, they were right there the whole time, it's amazing. But I have to be realistic about this, and I don't think they're gonna be in shape that's worthy of selling or making any money off of. Maybe you could find them and restore them to some degree, especially if the engines are intact, but it might turn into a ship of Theseus situation where so much has been degraded. It's like, yeah, are they even the same planes anymore if you restore them? Like, are we sure? Like, what does that even say? Like, okay, you got the original engines and the prop may have survived, I don't know, something. There might be bits and pieces, but the longer this takes, the more it's gonna degrade, and I guarantee most of it is already gone. Yeah, it's just one of those things, but hey, I have no issue with people looking into this kind of stuff, because it is interesting, and it is pretty great when it turns out, holy heck, you were right! They are there! Even if the end result looks a little worse for wear, but hey, only time will tell. If something is found, if nothing is found, all I can say is, open the tunnels, you cowards! That's where I'm at with it. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.